Very good.
Jai Shriman Narayana.
Jai Shriman Narayana Mataji.
Thank you for
You.
participating and for suggesting the subject, which is very interesting.
Yes.
Do you want to introduce it?
Yes, Mataji. What I wanted to discuss with you was a topic that I think has become more prominent as Hindus are starting to delve a little bit into the face and the external expression of their religion. And that, Mataji, is that how Hinduism has been affected or influenced by colonialism and by the various external influences that have impacted on it over the last few hundred years.
Yeah.
I think this is a topic that is starting to gain more prominence as people start to delve a bit deeper and think, hang on a minute, something's changed here. Why?
Yeah.
And I think people are now starting to ask questions. And I think more so, Mataji, as people start to understand that there is by your work and others, that there is a distinction between Sanatana dharma and Hinduism.
Yeah.
You've clearly outlined that. And I think in India itself, there's been an awareness that the people that were, how shall we say, put into power in India, even post-independence, may not necessarily have been working in alignment with the principles of Hinduism. So I think there's all sorts of there's been all sorts of discussions about this. But what I wanted to understand, Mataji, is perhaps how Hinduism has been how Hinduism itself has changed or adapted, for lack of a better word, in light of the colonial influences. I'd love to hear your take on this.
Yes. Okay. Very correct. Hinduism is not exactly Sanatana Dharma and is not exactly Vedic culture. We can say that Hinduism, as we know it, more or less, was highlighted, presented, represented in 1800 BC by Adi Shankara. Usually
1800.
That is, some people say 1800. Let me check, because I have here.
But even if you give or take a few hundred years,
that is still
way before. That is still way before modern, how the dates given to us by modern historians about Adi Shankaracharya.
Exactly. Let me find here the Vishnu Sahasranam I downloaded recently about the right, okay, Tukaram, no, it's okay, no problem, it will come out. I can check again, or maybe I think maybe because I am not so good with numbers, but basically it is much earlier than the 800 of the current era that is usually given by the academic system. So it was anyway, it was well into the Kali Yuga. What were the big changes that Adi Shankara introduced? First of all, he gave less importance to the Varna Ashrama system, because the Varna Ashrama system had already gone to pot, practically speaking. The Brahmanas were not qualified anymore as brahmanas. So what Adi Shankara did, he created an alternative to the Gurukula. So he created the concept of the mat. And he created this concept of the mat by using the Buddhist model of the vihara, which was a combination of monastery, if we want to call it monastery, ashram, library, and university. And he created the concept of the sampradaya. Before Adi Shankara, one was supposed to go and have several gurus if they wanted to progress in spiritual life. The guru,
Sure.
the basic guru and gurukula was not so much for spiritual or religious life, was for preparation to social life. So the guru, it was anyone who could teach anything. And the guru of the Gurukula was preparing the students for their future life in one of the varnas. So the students were all brahmacharis. After the end of the Gurukula period, they would become grihastas and then vanaprasthas and sannyasis according to their varna. Because not everybody was supposed to take sannyas. Not everybody was supposed to take vanaprastha.
Yes, on previous talks you mentioned
yes.
that the Shudras left the earliest. They were the earliest.
Exactly, and they were not. They were not expected to enter even the grihastha ashram. They could have a family, but that would not be an ashram. That would not be. They wouldn't have religious duties as grihasthas, because they were not supposed to have their own house with the regular rituals and the sacred fire and and all that. So because Kali Yuga had already progressed, and Buddha Siddhartha Gautama had proposed a different approach to personal realization, that was more similar to the tradition of yoga. Buddhism was much closer to the tradition of yoga and tantra. We can see that especially in Tibetan Buddhism, where the influence of tantra is very strong. Now, this was already a big change compared to the original Vedic system. But the Vedic system in Kali Yuga is difficult to apply. So Adi Shankara created, this, made this reform, and this is what developed as Hinduism. So Adi Shankara gave more importance to the bhakti and to the jnana in the sense of Atma Vidya. So he was working more on the Vedanta Sutra and the Upanishads, teaching mostly about Atman Brahman. The Upanishads, as you know, are the philosophical commentary to the Veda Samhita. So Veda Samhita, the Karmakanda, the Purva Mimamsa, previous approach, was about meditating on the material manifestations of God, so that as human beings we would behave in harmony with the universe. And then, as a philosophical commentary, just to understand who are we, and if the devas are part of the supreme or whatever, the Upanishads were compiled, were offered. So the Upanishads are talking mostly about the Brahman Atman. And this is also the yoga. Because the yoga means union with the supreme. So it's also, as we see in Bhagavad Gita. Now, where is the Tantra getting into the picture? Because Adi Shankara gave a great importance to bhakti, and specifically to upasana, to the worship of the deities, which is also something that was not included in the Varnashrama system. In the Varnashrama system, you only have the meditation on the devas and the religious duties in the society. Now, in the yoga and bhakti and tantra, there is no point, there is no concern for social duties. They are separate. Social duties must be carried on, as Krishna is very clearly explained in Bhagavad Gita, but they don't depend on bhakti. The difference of a yogi or a bhakta or a tantric is that we perform our duty by offering everything to the Supreme in the consciousness of yoga. Okay, so this emphasis on the spiritual, personal, spiritual development and meditation was put in the forefront by Adi Shankara. And by installing many deities and establishing many temples, Adi Shankara also spread the knowledge of Tantra Bhakti. The Tantra, yes.
But I have a question. So let's say, Mataji, I'm this imaginary person looking, in a time machine,
yes,
going from the beginning of the Kali Yuga,
yes,
straight to Buddha's, the time of Buddha, and then to Adi Shankaracharya.
Yeah.
What would I have seen in terms of the external? Let's say I'm looking at a group of Hindus. What would I have observed in my time machine moving forward?
In a time machine, if you go before, just at the beginning of Kali Yuga, we still had the Varnashrama system. We still had a lot of Vedic yagyas based on the Karma Kanda, the Purva Mimamsa. People were supposed to perform their duties, of course, without attachment to the results for themselves, without being selfish, but just as a service to the Viratrupa. We can see that in Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna asks Krishna, how should we meditate on you, and Krishna is showing the Viratrupa. It's not showing a specific tantric form, like in Bhakti Yoga, in Tantra. Now, in Vaishnava Tantra, Krishna is showing to Arjuna the Vishnu form and then the Krishna form. But then he says to Arjuna, this form is extremely difficult to understand. This is the translation of the concept of Tantra. Tantra is extremely difficult to actually understand, and it's secret because it can be easily misinterpreted by ignorant people. Avajananti Mamudha, Manushim Tanumashritam. So, there is more meaning in this Manushim Tanumashritam than meets the eye. Because in Tantra, especially in the Shakta Tantra and the Shaiva Tantra, but also in the Vishnu Tantra, we learn to install the deity in our own body. So Manushim Tanumashritam has, two levels of meanings. At the meaning that Krishna looks like a human being when he comes as an avatar, okay, that's also good. But, the deity, the Supreme Brahman, is taking shelter, if we can see that, Ashritam, inside the human body, as part of the human body. The tradition of applying the tilaka, the Vaishnava tradition.
Yes.
Gaudiya Vaishnava.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That
yes,
is,
that's also in all of them.
Yeah, that is Anganyasa. And this is a very specific tantric practice. And in this Anganyasa, the Vaishnavas apply the tilak to 12 parts of the upper body, and each part is of the body becomes the asana for a specific form of Vishnu, because there are the 12 names of Vishnu. You remember that?
Yes, and I've seen that with Ramanuja Acharya,
yes.
And devotees.
All the Vaishnava Tantra are doing that. This is...
And I've often wondered why. That there are these tilaks all over the upper body, and I've often wondered what the metaphysical significance of that is. Actually.
We install the deity in our own body. So this Manushim Tanumashritam has, a deeper meaning that, it's difficult to understand for those who are still identified with the body. And this is confirmed in the Upanishad and the Gita. I say that on the tree of the body, inside the cave of the heart, on the tree of the body, two birds are sitting. One is the Atman and the other is the Paramatman. Paramatman
yes,
is
I've heard
also,
that a lot.
Yeah,
I've heard that a lot.
Yeah, because it's so very true. So it's inside the body, but when we install the deity in our body through the Anganyasa and the Karanyasa, we actually become conscious of this presence. And if you go and see, I think it's chapter 6 of Bhagavata Purana, we have one chapter specifically entitled the Narayana Kavach. You have read it, maybe?
The Srimad Bhagavatam, I've not yet got to the 6th canto yet, but I've heard of it, certainly.
So the Narayana Kavacha is exactly explaining how to wear the Kavacha of Narayana, which is a completely tantric practice, and it's giving the instructions on the Karanyasa, which is installing the deities on our hands. Kara means hands. And the Anganyasa installing the deity on the various parts of our body. And it's not only the upper part of the body, it's the entire body. And again, it is repeating them in the stuti, in the stotra. It is specifically mentioned, that each form of Vishnu is installed on that particular part of our own body for protection. This is the kavacha, this is the armor.
Right. So, what you said, Mataji, is had I, in my time machine, I'm looking,
yes,
at the beginning of the Kali Yuga, I would have seen this practice to be ubiquitous.
Oh,
This would have
definitely.
been,
Yeah, ubiquitous,
would have been,
but not public.
no, of course,
Yeah.
secret,
Yeah,
yes.
through initiation, through diksha,
Through Diksha.
but
And then
not through sampradaya.
No, absolutely, because that came afterwards. So,
Yes.
so Mataji, I would have seen that, and then obviously, what else would I have seen as my time machine moved forward?
Yeah, next step. Yes, move forward, and we get the Muslims. The Muslims actually arrived.
No, but Mataji, you, I think even before that, you mentioned Buddha, and then you mentioned Adi Shankara.
Yes.
So I'm looking at this. I've not even got to the Abrahamics yet. I'm talking about Buddha and Adi Shankaracharya.
Yeah.
What would have been the external expression?
Yes, the face. The face of society in ancient India at the times of the Buddha was described by Jayadeva Goswami, for example, in his Dasavatara Stotra, and also in the Bhagavata Purana when talking about the various avatars, describing the reasons for the appearance of the Buddha as a Vishnu avatar. And obviously the situation of the Brahmanas and the Varnas was already very compromised. So what Buddha said, Buddhism is actually a reform of Hinduism. It's not a separate religion. Unfortunately, Buddhism has been politicized during the the independence struggle, the freedom fight, whatever, from the colonial rule. And because, people who didn't want to become Muslims, but they were not happy to remain Hindus, because Hindus were actually, unfortunately, we have to say that, Hindus were supporting the British Raj.
Okay, but Mataji, I'm looking at the time of Buddha.
Yes.
I'm looking at the appearance of Buddha.
Yeah.
I'm in my time machine and I'm looking at these Hindus at the time.
Yeah.
What am I seeing? What am I seeing immediately before Buddha? And what am I seeing with Buddha? What would that expression have looked like?
And in the times of Buddha, the Brahmanas had become more degraded, more, materialistic, and they were openly misinterpreting already the meaning of the yagyas in the Karma Kanda. So they were actually killing animals in the name of the Ashwamedha and the Gomedha Yagya, and people were actually supporting these Brahmanas, and, getting scared by the idea that if they were not pleasing the Devas with these animal sacrifices, they would go to hell, or they would get bad karma, or whatever. So the entire system had become very much perverted, and people had, very little interest in the science of the Atman Brahman. They didn't care much for the Upanishads. They cared only for the ritualistic parts. So, as you see, many people, still today, they're doing the same thing. Many Hindus today, they're very attached to the ritualistic part of the religion. And they don't even care to understand what the rituals are, what is the meaning. Yeah,
and
of
this
the
can
ritual.
be turning off. This can put a lot of people off.
Yeah, exactly. But that has been happening since the times of the Buddha.
And not only that, because if you don't understand the why behind the how,
exactly,
you're going to be sort of put off. So what I'm seeing in my time machine, Mataji, these brahmanas doing lots of animal sacrifice.
Yeah.
The ritual aspect had grown without necessarily any deeper understanding. And Buddha sought to change that.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
was animal sacrifice not permitted at that stage, or had it been outlawed
No,
by
animal
that stage?
sacrifice, there are two levels of animal sacrifice. You know, in the general, in Tantra, there are three categories of sadhakas. One is a Pashu, one is a Vira, and one is a Deva. In the Vaishnava tradition, specifically that we have seen, is the Kanishta, the Madhyama, and the Uttama Adhikari. Now, the animal sacrifice for the Kanishta Adhikari is a way to purify someone who wants to eat meat. So there are rules, you know. You cannot make animal sacrifices every day, and you cannot sacrifice any animal. There are rules. So for the Kanishta Adhikari, the animal sacrifice is a way to regulate the tendency to eating non-vegetarian food, Rajasic and Tamasic food. So, you know, some kind of purification. Now, at the level of the Madhyama Adhikari, Madhyama is described as someone who knows the Shastra. So we see, for example, in the Aitareya and Brihadaranyaka Upanishads, that the so-called animal sacrifice is explained on a very different level. It is explaining that the Pashu, the animal of the sacrifice, is actually the universe. It's a Viratrupa. It's not an animal. So no animal is actually killed. The meditation is on the form of the universe that is called the animal because it's material. The universe, the material universe is material. That is why it's called Pashu. So, you know, and this is the Madhyama level. So some people were, you know, actually performing these sacrifices with the proper shastric knowledge, and they were not killing any animals. Then we have the Uttama Adhikari, which was supposed to be a vanaprastha or sannyasi, who was meditating on these animal sacrifices as the process of yoga bhakti tantra. So the animal sacrificed in the ritual is a material identification. The Pashu is the material identification with the material gross physical body that we all have. It's a part of us that is identified with the physical gross body, which is non-different from an animal. You understand? So we have these three levels of understanding of animal sacrifices. Of course, when the Brahmanas, so-called Brahmanas or Brahmins, are on the level of Kanishta Adhikari, we have a problem. Because what are they going to teach the people?
Yes.
At
and
that point,
is that the level that Buddha found himself?
Exactly.
Found
in society.
Found Brahmanas.
In society.
He found Brahmanas effectively at that lowest level.
Exactly.
Matters.
Exactly. You know, and then that's why Buddha said, don't worry about the devas, don't worry about God, don't worry about anything. Just stop making bad karma. You know, just overcome, destroy the roots of suffering by proper behavior, good karma. Stop doing bad karma, because everything you're trying to get, whatever blessings you want to get from the devas or from God through all this bad karma is not going to help you, because it's not going to make any good karma.
So, Mataji, I'm sitting there as some hapless person at that time. I go to a Brahmana wanting, and I say, and the Brahmana kills an animal, and I'm thinking that he's doing this sacrifice so that my consciousness retains becomes closer, or becomes
No,
you
you do a sacrifice to go to Swarga, to get a good child, to get wealth, to get, the blessings of the devas. Material benefits. In fact, when Krishna in Gita says, those who worship the devas trying to get material benefits, they're actually worshipping God, but without knowledge.
Understood.
Avedi
Why had it
Purvakam.
gone like that?
Yeah.
But Mataji, why had it gone like that? Where let's say I'm your average person, and I go to a Brahmana, and I just want more material benefits. So he'll kill an animal, or she'll kill an animal.
Usually he. At this point, they're all males.
Yes, they're all male, so it's usually a he.
Yeah.
So, Mataji, am I not thinking about the supreme consciousness here as a person?
Yeah, that's the problem.
Person?
Exactly. That's why Buddha said, just stop it.
Mataji, before the Kali Yuga, how would I have approached a Brahmana before the Kali Yuga?
Oh, before the Kali Yuga, before the degradation of Kali Yuga, the Brahmana was supposed to be, Brahmana means Brahma Janati.
Mm.
Brahmana is one who knows Brahman.
Yes.
This is definition given by various Puranas, Atri Rishi, Janmanam Jayate Shudra,
Yes. Post Kali Yuga, Mataji, the Brahmana would have said, I'll do this sacrifice and you'll get riches.
Exactly.
And you'll go to Svarga. Whereas pre-Kali Yuga, it would have all been done with a quote-unquote higher purpose.
Exactly, because the Brahmanas were more, qualified.
So the primary issue here lies in the degradation of the Brahmanas.
Exactly.
This is so Buddha saw that. So please carry on.
And then, Adi Shankara saw that, in fact, the Brahmanas are still degraded. But the Buddhists have become...
But what did the Buddha do? He saw all this. Then how did he change what Hindus did at that point?
Again, he told the Hindus, don't worry about the devas, don't worry about Swarga, don't worry about anything, because everything is illusion.
Right. Yes.
So you need to do good things, noble, Four Noble Truths, how to avoid the suffering, how to put an end to suffering. And the Eightfold Noble Path basically is saying, don't do bad karma.
Yes.
So that was already a big step, to actually put an end to the mess.
Mm.
But, of course, not everybody became a Buddhist, And also the Buddhists became, after Buddha disappeared, there was this, unfortunately, Buddhism became the state religion of the Maurya Empire, Ashoka.
Yes.
So it became, quite politicized.
Mm-hmm.
And, it became also a bit confused. So when Adi Shankara appeared, he said, but, we need to go back to the Vedas. We need to go back to the actual, deeper understanding.
What made Adi Shankaracharya, what did he see that made him realize that, Mataji? Externally, what did he actually see?
Yeah, he saw that Buddhists had become atheists. They were against God, against the Brahman, against the Atman. They had become actually hostile to dharma, in the name of dharma.
Right.
And you can see it. Lots of commentaries and everything. Buddhists actually became, not Buddha himself, but the Buddhists that followed later on became quite confused. Now, I have seen recently, I happened to stumble on a video on YouTube that I was, oh, nice, this is a nice video. So I opened it, I played it, and it was the Dalai Lama, the current Dalai Lama, explaining the meaning of the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum. So I said, oh, nice, let's hear what he has to say. So, and he was saying that Om means the material body.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, okay, so Adi Shankara said, no, no, Om is not the material body. Because it's a 3-syllable, one is the body, one is the speech, and one is the mind. No. No. So Adi Shankara said, okay, we need to go back to the ABC. So he started the system of the Mata and the Sampradaya, which go together. Because in the Mat, you have the founder Acharya, which is, in his case, Adi Shankara. So, and the Mat becomes the equivalent of the Gurukula. And very similar to the Buddhist Vihar. In the Buddhist Vihar, the bhikshus, the monks, or even the abbot, we can use the Christian, equivalence because, that's what everybody uses. Neither the monks nor the abbots were the guru. The guru was Buddha.
Right? Oh, right. There was only one guru, and that was Gautama Buddha.
Exactly. Right. So, with the system on the Mat, in the Adi Shankaracharya Mat, the only guru was Adi Shankara. So, the person who was giving the physical diksha in the Sampradaya of Adi Shankara, in the line of Adi Shankara, it was practically a ritvik, was someone who is performing the ritual in the name of the Acharya.
Understood.
And this, that was picked up by the famous ritviks of, Prabhupada, Dungas.
Yes.
Okay.
But Adi Shankaracharya said, right, you lot need to go back to the Vedas.
Exactly. Let's go back to the Vedas, but don't worry so much about the Devas. Don't worry about the Purva Mimamsa. Let us focus on the Uttara Mimamsa. The Uttara Mimamsa, the higher approach to Vedic knowledge is through the Atma Vidya, the knowledge of Atman and Brahman. And this is done through Jnana and through Bhakti. Through Jnana, by the study of the Shastra, specifically the Upanishads, the Vedanta Sutra, the Bhagavad Gita. These are considered still today the Prasthanatraya, the first 3 steps in studying the Vedic knowledge. So first is Bhagavad Gita, which is the simplest, then goes to the Upanishads, which are a little more complicated and dense, and then we have the Vedanta Sutra, which is also speaking about the Brahman Atman, but on the level of logic. It's a very philosophical approach, a very theological approach. So, this was what Adi Shankara started to present. Just forget the Veda Samhitas. Rig Veda, don't get into that. Start with the Gita, Bhagavad Gita, then go to the Upanishads, and then, if you qualified sufficiently, especially for advanced studies, you can study the Vedanta Sutra. That's it. No need for rituals. If you want to do rituals, do the tantric rituals. Do the upasana to the Brahman, not to the Devas. You don't need to do any ritual for the Devas. Yeah, Buddha was correct. Just forget about the Devas, you know. So the Tantra Upasana, specifically Adi Shankara, gave this Pancha Upasana, which is worshipping the 5 forms of Brahman, who are Vishnu, Shiva, Shakti, Surya, and Ganesh. So he said, no, don't worry about the Devas, Indra, Agni, no. Vishnu, Shiva, Shakti, Surya, and Ganesh. You can do that, and you'll be okay. So he was also upholding the tantric tradition, but not in public. While the study of the Shastra, the Bhagavad Gita, for example, was open to everyone, the study of the Upanishad also was open to everyone who was actually able to understand. The study of the Vedanta Sutra was mostly for the teachers and the sannyasis. The sannyasis became the new brahmanas who were teaching. So in a sense they were gurus because they were teaching, but they were not they didn't get, have the personal responsibility of the disciple as it was before. Because there was a mat. The mat was supporting. So if the teacher was not sufficiently qualified, the disciple still had the mat to rely on. You understand what happened?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. And again, this whole transition has either been taught wrongly or has been, how shall we say, oversimplified.
Yeah. But if you go and for example, I spent 35 years in India, which 25 I was staying in Puri, and I have Puri, as you know, is one of the biggest centers of Hindu orthodoxy. The only other big center is Varanasi, Kasi. But Varanasi is a little more confused because there have been a lot of stuff. But Puri is very very strongly attached to the Orthodox Brahmin things.
So Mataji, I guess a lot of us have been taught the idea that Adi Shankaracharya debated the Buddhists and then managed to knock the Buddhist theology off its perch, so that then Advaita became the dominant. We've been taught this more competitive approach,
in a sense it is true, but it was not against the Buddha. It was against the atheistic presentations that the Buddhists had been developing. Because Buddha didn't deny the existence of God and the soul. Buddha just said, don't worry about that. Don't bother. But at some point, the Buddhist teachers started to say, that God is bad. God is false. It's an illusion. Everything is an illusion. The soul does not exist. Nothing exists. Everything is void. You see the problem?
Yes, because yes, absolutely. Carry on, please.
So the Buddhist tradition became like nihilist. So it became atheistic. It became destructive towards society and towards the spiritual progress of the individual, because it was pushing towards liberation, but liberation as a denial of existence.
this is the point, Mataji, and this is why this topic is really important, because and we could certainly spend. I think we should spend more time discussing this, because
I think we need to have a second part.
I think we should have a second part, because I think even this period, we've not even got to the Abrahamic period yet.
Exactly.
Even this period is important, because there is this. Do you think that people, Adi Shankaracharya saw that people were in danger of an end point being nothingness?
Of course.
So he recognized that the the reaction to the bad behavior of the Brahmanas initially, which led to the Buddha reforming things, then created this danger. It went the other way. Where people stopped even before Atman realization.
Of course.
So there was a recognition that this was happening, and most people's endpoint was in fact nothingness in essence, basically.
Exactly.
Is that right, Mataji?
Yes, precisely. That was dangerous. Both individually and for society. So, Adi Shankara said, no, we need to correct this problem, So he was engaging in debates, and not against the Buddha, but against these, conclusions that were, toxic and dangerous for the individual and for society. Yeah.
So can you sum up those conclusions that Adi Shankaracharya was debating? Let's say I'm sitting in this debate now, and I know there were quite a lot of them. What would the Buddhist camp have said?
Oh, the Buddhists, as we just said now, the Buddhists will come up and say everything is illusion, nothing exists. We need to realize that nothing exists. It's all illusion. We need to attain nirvana, which means completely cessation of everything, of existence. Nirvana, you extinguish the lamp.
Yes, nirvanam, as they say in the Bhagavad Gita.
But then Adi Shankar said, no, the Brahma Nirvana that Krishna is explaining in Bhagavad Gita is not the extinguishing of the lamp. It is a lamp that is burning brighter because it's not agitated and disturbed by the wind. It's not disturbed by the mind, the agitations of the mind. So what we need to understand is that illusion is not existence, but illusion is the idea of duality, the idea of the material identification, material attachment. That is illusion. But that's existence really is not illusion. Brahma Satya Jagan Mithya. Brahma Satya means Brahman exists. Existence is real. What is illusion is the world, is the material world, because it's always changing. So you have heard this, Brahma Satya Jagan Mithya. It's very famous.
But Mataji, it's really interesting because again, and we're not going to drill into any specifics or names, but there is a common misconception that how you framed the Buddhist camp. Yeah. That's what people say Advaita is, because they think that Advaita thinks that the material world is an illusion.
But the material world is an illusion. Krishna says it.
Yes.
In Bhagavad Gita, what is it? Krishna then is a Mayavadi. Oops.
No, but what I'm saying is that they think that...
Of course. Adi Shankara had to use the language of the Buddhists to talk with them.
Yes, that's it. But Adi Shankaracharya was saying the true illusion is one of duality.
Exactly.
Where you think that the Atman and the Brahman are separate.
Not only that, when you think that the duality is that Yeah, Atman and Brahman, but the Atman and the Kshetra and the Kshetragya are also, one and not one. There is no duality. Brahman is everything. Like the Upanishad say, Sarvam Kalvad Idam Brahma. Everything is Brahman, not just the Atman Brahman. So the duality is also between Brahman, the spirit, and matter.
And what would the Buddhists have believed at that time?
Oh, they believe that everything is illusion. Atman, Brahman, material nature, everything is, the world, everything is illusion. The soul, everything is illusion.
Whereas what Adi Shankaracharya believed was that, what Adi Shankaracharya taught was that, in fact, the illusion is the separation of Atman from Brahman.
Yes, exactly. The separation between Brahman and everything else. Because Brahman is everything. How can you separate, everything from everything? This is what Adi Shankara, started to preach. He was telling to the Buddhists, they say, the material world is illusion in the sense that it looks like something that it is not. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Because Brahman is the complete existence. Upanishads are saying that very clearly. Brahman is the many multiform existence of the one. It's everything that exists. And Gita is saying, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. And Krishna is saying, Brahmanohi Pratishtaham. I am the basis of the Brahman. And, Brahman is both male and female. Is both Purusha and Prakriti. And it's both spiritual and material. The Mahatattva is Brahman. So that's what Adi Shankara was telling the Buddhists. The Buddhists were like, what? They were a little confused. So yeah,
that's fascinating, because that's a whole new insight. And then, Mataji, we're going to cover the Abrahamic sort of influence in part 2. But before we conclude part 1, obviously, from a Vaishnava side, we are in our time machine and we see Ramanuja Acharya appearing. And
Ramanuja, exactly.
There's a further evolution that happens. So I would love to know.
But Ramanuja, I think that Ramanuja appeared at the same time when the Muslims had already started to appear.
Oh, right. Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting.
Because the Muslims started to, to look at India from the very beginning. So already in the 700, 800 of the current era, the Muslims were starting to get into India. And already even the tradition of Adi Shankar was getting tired.
In what way, Mataji?
In the way that, it was losing the plot. It was losing the story. And they became increasingly politicized, and they were not able to actually have sufficient impact on society, because, for the simple fact that they were preaching sannyas. Brahmacharya and sannyas, they were not involved in society. So they became less and less relevant to society. And in the meantime, society, was still going down the drain. So, for example, the famous Gupta period, that, you know, the Abrahamic, the mainstream academia is presenting like the golden age of ancient India, is actually, you know, a big step of degradation. Because under the Gupta Empire, in the Gupta period, the idea of empire started to become a Hindu concept. It was Ashoka's concept, now it became a Hindu concept. And the emperor wanted to control the entire territory, the entire region. So he appointed representatives, not independent kings. In the Vedic system, the emperor does not appoint the local rulers. The emperor in the Vedic system, the Chakravarti, is just a head of an alliance of independent kings. But in the concept of empire, it's the emperor who is the one and only, and all the others are servants of the emperor, appointed.
What does that political structure have to do with Adi Shankaracharya?
No, Adi Shankara came before that.
Right. Okay.
Now, then we have to consider that the first empire in recorded history is the Assyrian Babylonian Empire.
Yes.
Then we have the Persian Empire, the Parsi Empire, Seleucid. Then we have Then we have the Greek Empire, Alexander the Great. And then when Alexander the Great died, his empire split into the Ptolemaic Empire and the Seleucid Empire. So the idea of empire was catching on. And the Gupta Empire, they got the idea. So in society, what we have is that the kings are not independent anymore, they're not kings anymore. We have the emperor, and then we have the representatives of the emperor, which are the politicians and the bureaucrats. And this is how the Kayasta category started. The Kayasta is not a Varna, it's not one of the four Varnas. The Kayastas were invented as a caste of the Varna to accommodate the unqualified sons of Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. So they couldn't put them...
I was going to laugh, Mataji, and say that's what you call the managerial class today.
Exactly, yeah. But it's more bureaucratic and political. Because the Kshatriya are supposed to manage by protecting the prajas and taking care of the prajas, making sure the prajas are happy and everything. While the politicians, the managers, are actually working for the benefit of the state and are exploiting the prajas.
So effectively, this seems to have not been very healthy.
No.
And something therefore, what you're suggesting is something had to change at that point.
And at that point, as I was saying, the Adi Shankara mat was not very helpful, was not helpful enough, because it didn't concern itself with society. Because it was focused on sannyas. This is how Ramanuja came into the picture and changed it. Because Ramanuja started to initiate grihastas in his mat.
Up to that point, no grihastas could be initiated, basically.
Well, the grihastas were not supposed to be teachers. Sannyasis were representing the acharya, and so they were considered teachers. They were part of the mat. You see, still today, what kind of people you find in the mats in India? You find grihastas? No.
Nope.
So, who are you finding there?
Well, you don't find householders.
Exactly, yeah. Because the mat is not a household. But what Ramanuja started, he said, no, it's okay. You can be teachers. If you want to be grihastas, you can be like the brahmanas of old times. You can be teachers. You can have, you can be initiated. You can be representatives of the mat. You see the difference?
Oh yeah. And practically, how did that help society? Did that mean that people could do their normal job and still be on a spiritual
Exactly. They were inside society. They were not outside society. Because a sannyasi, if you go and see the sannyasa Upanishads, they shouldn't even have a house. They shouldn't even stay in a place for more than 3 days. They cannot teach. So they
and that probably had a role in those days.
Of course, that was a different type of when there were the brahmanas who were doing the job of teaching and guiding society, the sannyasis were just preparing to move on, through moksha and through living, becoming liberated. But Ramanuja started this application of moksha and through jnana and bhakti and tantra to social positions. So you can still do it, but you don't have to take sannyas. So this was a big change, by Ramanuja. So at the same time, Ramananda, Ramananda broke from the Ramanuja, was a branch of the Ramanuja Sampradaya. Specifically, Ramananda started the system of the Akhadas. Already Adi Shankara had founded the Akhadas, the 10 orders of the sannyasis who were engaged in study and teaching, another 10 orders called Juna, Akada, for example, where they were in charge of defending the holy places, the temples, and So yes. Then you have the Nagababas. These are the Nagababas. They were established mostly by Adi Shankara because the Muslim was starting to come. And Ramananda expanded on these, militant sadhus, militant vairagis, by actually putting a lot of importance in physical training and combat training. So it increased the participation in society to protect society, both philosophically through the teaching and the good example, and physically through actually protecting the pilgrimage places and the temples and the people, and Hindus. So this is why you go to the Kumbh Mela. The Babas that you find in the Kumbh Melas who are, most respected because they are most feared. They are the Nagababas of Adi Shankara and the Vairagis of Ramanandi. So, that is historically, how it happened. That is already into Hinduism. It's not in the Vedic system anymore. Because in the Vedic system, you don't need to tell the Brahmanas or the sadhus to defend the temples. You have the Kshatriyas doing that.
That's what I was thinking, because I was thinking that shouldn't the Kshatriyas be doing all that?
Yeah, and the Brahmanas would teach and have, never use their material power. And the Kshatriyas would protect the society and never use their spiritual power.
You're creating...
Yeah.
Because again, what I'm observing now is that we're seeing a slight deviation from the four varnas, and you're creating these subcategories of people like the Naga sadhus, etc., that do certain functions that are outside the specific four varnas. So Hinduism here doesn't equate to Sanatana Dharma,
and it doesn't equate to Varnashrama Dharma either.
No. And is it because it's evolving with the times and with the consciousness
exactly,
of the
to the needs of the time. In fact, even in the Vedic system, the Varnashrama Dharma, as Krishna is explaining it in Bhagavad Gita, is specifically up to the Dwapara Yuga and beginning of Kali Yuga. Because, we know from the Shastra that in Satya Yuga there was just one Varna and one ashram. Everyone was a Paramahamsa. There was no distinction of, there was no social need for anything. Because there was no criminality, no aggressions, no anything, no problem. The land would give plenty without even being cultivated. So what is the need of Kshatriyas and Vaishyas then? So there was no need for the different varnas. Then in Treta Yuga we had to start, distinguishing the Dvijas, the twice born from those who are not twice born. So the Kshatriyas, the Dvijas divided themselves into Brahmanas and Kshatriyas because the Kshatriyas needed to focus on protecting the kingdom and the prajas.
Yes.
And then in the Dwapara Yuga, again, the Vaishyas became more important because the land was not giving so much. So, human beings needed to actually focus more on taking care of the land and the cows. And in Kali Yuga, people are Shudra, Kala Shudra Sambhava.
And not only that, you need to, because of all the invasions and external influences and lots of things, you need to create subcategories of individuals like the Naga sadhus, etc. to
and we have to go beyond the original Varna system. And also the original ashrama system. It's not that we cannot use them anymore. But we cannot depend on them exclusively.
That's the key, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can't depend on the four varnas.
So we are not limited to the Varnashrama Dharma. So Hinduism is based on the Vedic culture, but is not exactly the Vedic culture. So it's also based on Sanatana Dharma, but it's not exactly Sanatana Dharma. There are three different, three different meanings. But Hinduism is, especially today, is okay because, we need to use the definition on a legal platform, to retain the human rights that are recognized by international jurisprudence. So, if you're not a Hindu, what are you? Sanatani. Then you have no religious rights. You don't have any human rights to religious freedom because Sanatana is not a religion. And that is why, the Hindus who continue to insist, Hinduism is not a religion. They don't know what they're doing. They're shooting their own foot.
Yes. Absolutely, and I think you've got to use language
Yeah.
that people are
We
familiar
need
with,
to
because
explain to people that not all religions are the same. Which
indeed, and
I
indeed,
agree.
that's what
Yeah.
Adi Shankaracharya, when he debated the Buddhists, used
Yeah.
their language,
Exactly.
because he wasn't going to go in there with using, words that were above everyone's head. He had to sort of go in
Yes.
there
Exactly.
at their level, so to
Yeah.
speak,
Speak their
Matajiism,
language.
effectively.
Yeah.
Indeed, indeed, and I think
Otherwise, nobody would understand. So what's
so.
the
What
point?
we've discussed, what we've discussed in this really wonderful part
Yeah.
one is how things changed from
Yes.
pre-Kali Yuga times
Yes.
into the Kali Yuga.
Yeah.
We're seeing what we saw with the
Yeah.
degradation of a quote-unquote
That
Brahminical culture.
next time we are
Yeah.
going to see the situation with the Islam, and then
Yes.
with the colonial times. And
Yes.
I already, downloaded here the famous
Yes.
lecture on the Bhagavata
Yes.
Purana by
Yes.
Bhaktivinoda Thakur Kedarnath Datta in
Yes.
1869, which is the bang in the center of the colonial period.
Yes. Wonderful, and I think
Okay.
I think part two would certainly devote to that, and I think there may even be role for a part three, which is the future of Hinduism.
Yes, of course.
Because I think
Of course.
that's probably the best way to look at it. So I'd like to thank you for your time and look forward to the second part
Thanks
of
to
this
you,
series.
Jai. Thank
Jai
you for
Shrimanarayana.
participating. It's very important. It's like, it's like in the Gita Mahatmya, Adi Shankara is describing Krishna as the Gopa and the Arjuna as the calf, and the
Right.
Upanishad like the cow. So we are
Sure.
milking the Vedic knowledge. And we need,
I'm definitely,
yeah,
I'm definitely not. I'm definitely. I can't
the
be compared to any
cow,
of those.
yeah, the cow needs a calf,
Very good. Matthew,
Thank you.
thank you for your time and look forward to
Jai.
part two. Jai
Jai
Shrimanarayana.
Shrimanarayana.